ain't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, so today's video, I'm gonna be talking about the final issue, the finale of IDW's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with issue number 150. This has a tremendously large creative team on it, so I'm gonna try and make sure I don't miss anybody. This has story consulting by Kevin Eastman, a co-creator of the Ninja Turtles. It is written overall by Sophie Campbell with art by Vincenzo Federici, Pharaoh Pei, Dan Duncan, and Sophie Campbell with color by Rhonda Pattinson and Luis Antonio Delgado. This is a massive, and when I say massive, I mean massive issue. This issue is literally 62 pages of salvation, and it's an awesome thing to see, awesome thing to read. Just to get into it real quick, just as far as like from a pure review perspective, because I'm not really going to be breaking down any of the previous 50, 60 some odd issues that have come out since that kind of built up to this moment. It's one of those things that we're just talking about the single issue itself. I will say right now off rip, if you come into this as someone who has not read any of the previous issues of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles at IDW, or I would actually even dare say just the last 50 issues of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles since Sophie Campbell has taken over, you probably will not know what the hell is going on. This is an issue that is trying to finish the story, and it is not very interested in trying to hold your hand all the way through it. And honestly, I feel like that's okay, that's fine. That's not a bad thing, because I mean, you're trying to tell a story. You're not trying to be like, oh, hey, let me tell you about all this other stuff that happened that you probably should have read before you picked this one up. I mean, that to me is more of a personal problem for the people who didn't read, but it does do a good job of telling you where certain stuff comes from, like, you know, the way comics typically do. Hey, this is from issue this is from issue that. There's multiple moments where this comes up. But one thing I will say about the story, and I have largely loved Sophie Campbell's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles up to this point, I will say a lot of stuff is happening, and most of it, you know, for being the finale of the Ninja Turtle series as a whole, I could see where people who have a very specific favorite turtle would probably feel left out in the cold a little bit. Now, I say that because this isn't really so much of a spoiler, but this issue largely focuses on Donatello. Now, that said, a lot of the different characters have been focused on over the course of Sophie Campbell's run. Those characters largely being Leonardo, Raphael, and Jenica. Those characters have probably gotten the lion's share of the storytelling. Michelangelo probably not too terribly far behind them in that regard, but I also kind of feel like Michelangelo is one of those characters, you focus on him for too long, especially considering the fact he already has another Ninja Turtles series that is pretty much all about him. I am okay with that. And also being a guy whose favorite Ninja Turtle is Donatello, I had no issue with this. But I can totally see where there's some people, like if you're a Leonardo stan or a Raphael stan, you know, or a Michelangelo stan, I could see where you would be a little miffed that you didn't really get to see much of those characters in this issue, because Donatello gets the lion's share of it. I thought it was a bold choice. I thought it was a very bold choice. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't know if it will pay off. But I will be brutally honest here. I feel like that is kind of par for the course with Sophie Campbell and her writing of the series. She has, by and large, not tried to go for the low-hanging fruit on any of the Ninja Turtles, anything. She is largely, and I don't want to use the term stuck to her guns, but like, I feel like she had a very specific story in mind. She had a very specific story she wanted to tell using characters that you don't see all the time. And I feel like she did a really good job with it. I have, you know, kind of joked on social media that, and yeah, I'm actually dead ass serious when I say this, but just, you know, being very tongue in cheek when I say it, that I feel she has presented us with, you know, not only the best version of Venus de Milo, but also the best version of Toka and Razor. You know, she has given us what I personally feel is a maybe even better familial kind of teenage vibe with the Turtles. Like, you know, it's one of those things I've criticized before. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I mean, for being teenagers, they don't always act like teenagers. And this felt like a more authentic, not just teenager, but older teenager kind of familial bond these characters have now, because they're getting older. They're getting to the point where I don't think any of them is older, at least, you know, socially, than like 16, 17 by this point, but you're hitting that age where, you know, you're more rebellious. You know, no matter what your personality is, you're probably a lot more quick to push back against something, whether it suits your best interest or not. That's that rebellious age, and you know, I think she captured it perfectly. But beyond that, I will definitely say, yeah, it was a bold choice, but you know, she has made tons of those, and you know, I'm not gonna say that all of them work, but I do appreciate that she didn't just try and give us bog standard, same old TMNT every single issue. She always tried to do something different, and that is, you know, I think what is probably the most important thing, considering that, you know, these comics have been around for like 40 years. All that aside, getting into the art of it, art looks great. It kind of jumps around in different portions of the story. You know, I've been very critical of that as of late, but this is, as I've said when I have been critical, this is one of those issues where I'm okay with it, because like I said earlier, this is 62 pages. So I would expect other artists to come in, and not only do other artists come in, but I feel like they come in the places where they're most needed. Like the last few pages of the story are drawn by Sophie Campbell. She writes the story, and you know, her art on the series, I feel, was one of the draws to the series for a long time before she started writing it. So the fact that it kind of ends where I felt it, you know, kind of came full circle. You know, Sophie started out drawing, then she ended up writing, now she's doing both at the very end of the issue, and everybody else is, you know, pretty solid, you know, across the board. Just to, you know, kind of break it down a little bit further, because I know it kind of jumps around a bit, but Vincenzo Federici is fantastic as, you know, per usual. I didn't have any issues, you know, whatsoever with their style. Their style has largely been synonymous with the series almost, I won't say throughout the entire, well, maybe almost throughout the majority of the Ninja Turtles run. Vincenzo doesn't necessarily do every single damn issue, but he's done a lot. Farape is probably my personal favorite, though I will definitely say Dan Duncan does a great job in this as well, though they don't do quite as many pages as everybody else does. But yeah, the art across this was fantastic, and Rhonda Pattinson has consistently, as well as Luis Antonio Delgado has also been pretty consistent on colors as well. They kind of bounced back and forth between these two colorists primarily. Luis Antonio Delgado does a fantastic job. Their colors stick out a great deal. Like, they have a good way of like doing like dark versus light in their colors, but I will definitely say between the two, I feel like no one colors Sophie Campbell's work like Rhonda Pattinson. So that's my personal preference there. Getting into everything else of it, like how does it end? Like, this issue is basically a case study in how to close the loop. And that's something I felt Sophie did very well here. Without really going too terribly deep off into it, Donatello, the reason why this is focused on him is because over the course of the series, especially since Sophie Campbell took over, Donatello has shifted more from being into gadgetry to being into magic. And he's been studying not only magic, but also studying what is referred to as Q&A. It's basically like DNA, but for time. He's been studying this for a while, and he's, you know, been kind of playing around with it, and it ends up kind of dragging the Turtles into some Turtles in Time shenanigans, though more specifically tied to Donnie, less so the others. He's been traveling through the, you know, future, the past, and there's a point in this where he even goes back to the very beginning. And for those who know what I'm talking about, the Ninja Turtles have had their origin retconned in the IDW universe, and I could spend a lot of time talking about it here, but I feel like if you really want the full story, check out this video up here. To get more into it, he goes all the way back to feudal Japan, and he even goes back to the moment that the Turtles were mutated and trying to preserve those moments, making that tough choice as to whether or not to preserve those, all while being hunted down by the Ninja Turtles villain Armagon, which sounds kind of crazy because Armagon's very different in this compared to what you might be used to. It's not really till the end of the story we see Armagon look in a way that's familiar to fans who are more familiar with him from the animated series. It's all done pretty well, I think. I was actually wondering if they were going to retcon the, you know, Clan Hamato origin, the feudal Japan stuff. It doesn't seem like that's the case at all. It seems like all that's still intact. And we kind of knew this going in because when it was announced that Jason Aaron was going to be taking over after Sophie Campbell, one of the things I thought was very interesting about that was that they said this isn't a reboot. Like, this isn't Jason Aaron starting over from square one, giving us an all new origin, retconning everything that was put in place. It sounds like the IDW universe origin is going to be what is ultimately considered the core origin, maybe not necessarily for everything, but definitely for any comics going forward. This is all kind of picking up from there, and I don't know how they're going to do this because a lot has happened to these turtles. They have been through a lot, so much. That it's insane. And I've been meaning to do more videos about the turtles, but I'm not gonna lie, I've been getting bogged down in X-Men stuff and also other like personal projects, so I apologize for that. It's not that I'm not gonna do these things, it's just they're taking longer than I had initially planned. But yeah, I thought this was great. I thought this was fantastic. I was very, very, very happy with how this ended. The way that Sophie, brought it, full circle, and even left the door wide open for Jason Aaron to come in and write whatever he wants to write without making anything feel out of place. Like, I will go and tell you right now, if you're one of those people who is miffed by the idea that Splinter is no longer among us, that didn't change. None of that was changed in this. And if you're curious about what's going on with Shredder, doesn't seem like anything's been changed there either. So it leaves the door open for Jason Aaron to tell a story that I think could be really unique. I actually hope going into, Jason Aaron's Ninja Turtles that he doesn't undo anything. I say a lot of this too because the female turtles that were both introduced and reintroduced in the series have largely, to me, become a part of the core Ninja Turtles family, not just characters who exist, on the periphery, on the outskirts of the Turtles, but characters who I feel you should see included all the time, not just some of the time. And they do find an interesting way to, keep Venus around, but also at the same time keep her at arm's length. But I don't know if Jason Aaron is going to pull Venus back into the fold. I don't know how that's going to work out. We don't really know what's going to happen with Jenica either. But we do know that if this is not a reboot, all the characters are still very much present in some way, shape, form, or fashion. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens next on that one. But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 150 was honestly not what I was expecting or hoping it would be, but it is something that I still thoroughly enjoyed. Like, once again, I have a little bit of bias. I'm a Donatello guy. I've always been a Donatello guy. I was never a Michelangelo guy. I was never a Leonardo guy. I am sometimes a Raphael guy because I totally feel his energy. I totally understand where he's coming from a lot of the time. Like, if there was any other turtle in the family that, the core original four, that would be the character I probably identify with the most, other than Donatello. And yeah, and I'm a huge fan of Jenica as well, and Venus. I used to not be a fan of Venus, but under Sophie Campbell, definitely a fan of. So I don't know. We don't know what he's gonna do. We're gonna have to wait and see. We still have until July before we're really gonna know anything for certain when the first 4 issues of Ninja Turtles comes out, which I believe issue number 1 is gonna focus on Raphael, 2 is gonna focus on Michelangelo, number 3 will be Leonardo, 4 will be Donatello, and they'll all have different artists on them to one degree or another, and a murderer's row of them. Joel Jones, Raphael Albuquerque, Cliff Chang, and Chris Burnham. Like, it's gonna be something special. So even though I'm sad to see this era end, it's nice to know that, in advance, it's nice to know that there's something in the works already and will be out soon. You guessed it, obligatory channel outro time. If you're not subscribed to the channel, consider doing so. Clicking that subscribe button and tapping that notification bell ensures that you get more videos just like this one, and you don't miss any of my other content that I drop throughout the week, plus my live streams every Thursday and Saturday. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you click that like button, keep it plus ultra, and sound off in the comments.